right, everyone, welcome to the webinar on how to write a successful award nomination. My name is Ben White. I'm the Senior Program Specialist for Missouri Main Street Connection and actually your direct contact on the staff level on all the awards that we're writing here. So if you ever have any questions, I'll have my information in there, but I am your direct contact if you have any questions throughout this process. And I'm joined today by my coworker, Keith Wingy.
Yeah, welcome everybody. I want to do a quick shout out to we're on a webinar today, so you're in listen only mode, but there are ways for you to communicate with us, and we're recording this so other folks can watch it later if they're not able to make it today. You can use the chat. In fact, I'd like everybody to put in the chat what community they're representing today. And then there's also a Q&A button where you can ask questions as we go through the presentation. And I'll help manage those and kind of lump them together if there are similar questions as we go through. But feel free to ask questions, to put things in the chat if you have feedback or ideas or things. We certainly welcome that and appreciate that. All right, Ben, I think we're ready to go.
Yes, and so I am joined today by Marla Mills and Jill Purvis. You'll hear from them at the end, and so they're going to talk about how they were successful as an organization in putting together award-winning nominations. And so you hear firsthand their experience on what that will look like. So we hear from them at the end. So let's first talk about, there we go, who can actually apply for the award. So only accredited, associate, and affiliate organizations in good standing that have an agreement with us at Missouri Main Street Connection can actually submit award nominations. So determine if your organization is in good standing, you can just email me. So only those designated Main Street programs that have that agreement with us, that yearly agreement with us, are eligible to apply for the awards. Each Main Street organization is also limited to only 6 nominations that they can submit. Under the organization category, and we're actually going to go over what these categories are here in a little bit, you are only eligible to apply for 2 different categories. The design, 2 different nominations, 2 categories within the design point there. Promotion, 1 nomination, and economic vitality, 1 nomination. And so 6 nominations in all, and that is spelled out in the instructions as well.
Ben, let's back up just a second. I
Yeah.
see we have a couple of very new communities in our webinar today. All of these things we're talking about are awards given out at our annual dinner, which is held the last evening of our state conference in July. So it's a big celebration recognizing all of the great work that's happening in our Missouri Main Street districts from the previous year. And so it's always a fun, exciting evening with about 150 of your other Main Street friends across the state vying for honors and recognition for the projects and work that they've been doing in their Main Street community. So that's kind of the culmination of this process we're going to talk about today. The culmination of it is at that awards dinner.
Yes, thank you. Let's talk about what actually goes into those award nominations themselves. So what specifics go into that narrative? So each one of them has a different set of criteria on what makes for a good narrative, but these are some of the basics with it. So each narrative should be at least 500 words, but no more than 1,000 words. And so be succinct in telling your story for why that project, that event in your community, in your downtown is worthy of that award using those parameters. And then with that, we want to see photos and high quality photos, at least 5, but no more than 10. So we will actually show these if you're selected as a semifinalist, as a finalist for the awards on that night that Keith mentioned. We will show these pictures on there. So we want them to be high quality for some of the press releases that we do afterwards and for that actual Evening of Excellence event. So 5, but no more than 10. And then a project can only be nominated in one category. So if you think you have a project that could work for multiple categories, just choose one category for that actual nomination.
I'm sure, let's go back, Ben. I'm sure Jill and Marla are going to talk about this, but we focused on this a lot in last year's webinar, and it's in our archives if you want to go look at it on YouTube. But this is the critical piece, the narrative part of it. Um, there we have judges that look at all of the nominations and whittle it down, and they don't know your community. They don't know your downtown. They don't know your project. So you're telling a story of this project, and it's so important to spend time on that narrative and have multiple people work on that narrative. Because again, you're trying to tell a story to judges that know nothing about your project or your downtown. So get others involved, spend great time on that, be descriptive. Ben's going to show you the checklist and stuff. There's certain things that are required with nominations. Make sure you're covering all those bases and answering the questions related to the nomination. Again, some of the stuff they shared last year is that, maybe the nomination said you needed to demonstrate and explain the impact that this project had in your downtown, and nowhere in the narrative did they talk about impact. And so that can certainly wipe you out from being a finalist or from being a winner. So a lot of emphasis put on that narrative piece there. And that's why we give you at least 500 to 1,000 words to do that, because some projects and initiatives are very complex. So take your time in that area.
Go into it thinking that the judges don't know anything about your project. Be able to paint that story from beginning to end. And like Keith said, paint that impact. Take a look at that narrative, what it's specifically looking for, and make sure you answer those questions. So I'm going to go through those categories. So the first one I'm going to start with is organization. And so there are 4 different categories in the organization, or 4 different nominations in the organization category here. The first one is Outstanding Community Empowerment Grant Community. So those are community empowerment grant communities that have been active in 2023, 2024, and or 2025. So for instance, with this one, these are communities that have gone above and beyond in the program that I manage, the Community Empowerment Grant, and have really shown exceptional progress in establishing a new downtown organization and are able to show why they've had exceptional progress in that category. The next one is the Best New Awareness Campaign. So this is recognition of excellence and targeted campaign that educates the community on a streamlined effort to raise awareness on a particular aspect of a Main Street program, like a farmer's market, community pride, beautification, Main Street advocacy. So a targeted campaign by the Main Street organization that educates the community in some way. We leave it pretty open on purpose for that. Then we have the Spirit of Main Street Award. And so previously, this was actually that Volunteer of the Year award, but we've actually brought in the scope of what that looks like. So this award goes to an individual from the community that has demonstrated continued support to the downtown revitalization program and showcased great work in the downtown. And so this is one of your opportunities to say, this person has been impactful. And here's why. This is why they've been impactful in the downtown and for our organization. So really be able to tell that story of why they have been, how they have been impactful. And then the last one is that premier partner with from a Main Street organization and another local community entity, public or private. So maybe it's a chamber of commerce that you've had a great partnership with, or your city, the county government. Be able to show why that partnership has been beneficial for downtown. So with each one of these, and we will actually pop this into the chat, this is the paper copy that we are showing here. And Keith here in a little bit is actually going to pull up on the screen the submittable application. And so it's a whole platform on which you actually submit all of these different nominations. But this paper copier has a lot of these different kinds of requirements and such. And so it allows you to be able to put together your nomination even before submission of it on that submittable platform. So each one of these, as I mentioned, has special submission requirements. Like for instance, most of these are going to be for the year 2024. They're nominations specifically on projects, on initiatives that you have done in the past year, except for if it's mentioned on here, like the Outstanding Community Empowerment Grant. As I mentioned before, those are activities that have happened between 2023 and 2025. And so, as I mentioned, each one of these has just a little bit of special submission requirements. Like, for instance, the nomination for the Best New Awareness must be accompanied by a detailed action or work plan. That is so important as the judges are looking at what makes for a good application. They are looking for, okay, was this well thought out? Do we identify what the budget for this was? Do we identify the partners that we needed to bring into this because that all goes into the scoring is being able to see, okay, there was a plan of action for this particular project.
So
The next one,
I did pop the PDF in the
thank
chat,
you.
Ben, which is all of this information that he's showing you, plus a checklist that we'll talk about in just a minute.
Thank you. So the next one is the economic vitality category. And so the first one is Outstanding Economic Impact Project, which is awarded to an individual, business, municipality, or partnership of entities that has undertaken a new development project within the downtown district. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a brick and mortar project. It can be a brick or mortar project, but really it should show how through this project you've been able to improve the quality of life and have a proven positive, measurable impact. Again, that word shows up in various ways, and you can show that impact in different ways depending on what that category, what that nomination actually is. But with this one, it is showing, okay, how have we been able to improve that quality of life? Why was this an outstanding economic impact project? The next one is a best downtown housing project, which recognizes the importance of housing in the district, and so it nominates a successful housing project. And so this is a good opportunity. Not all of these have to be Main Street led projects. Many times, this is a developer, a project, someone that owns a building that's putting together a housing project here. And so again, not all of these projects that are in this application have to be necessarily led by the Main Street organization, but it has to still be, all of these nominations have to be submitted by the Main Street organization. The next one does have to be led by the Main Street organization. So this is the Main Street Business Recruitment Award. And so in this category, this is how a Main Street program has assisted efforts to recruit a new business in the Main Street districts. So different business recruitment activities, how you were able to do that. Maybe it's some pop-up programs, some business incubator space, different business recruitment efforts. The next category is promotion. And so there actually is only one promotion category for this one because it's pretty wide open. So this is the creative new promotion. This award recognizes the downtown organization that has produced a quality creative promotion generating traffic. So this can be an event, or maybe it's not even an event. Maybe it's some other kind of promotional activity that got people on the sidewalks walking around that was able to bring that positive image of downtown, maybe outside of an event, or maybe it is an event. We leave it pretty wide open with this category to be able to apply for. So think about it. It can be outside of the parameters of starting a new event for this category. So the only special submission requirements for the promotion category here is that the nomination must include that, again, that detailed action plan. How was this plan of action put into place? We want to see that as part of the award nomination. That is something that the judges really take into high regard, is a detailed action plan, so they can see that there's been some thought and there's been some budgeting that has happened with it. You bring in additional partners into this project.
And while you're transitioning, I just want to remind folks that if they have questions, please use the Q&A section to ask those questions, and we'll get to those at the end. But if you think of them as we're going through, please go ahead and type those in, and we'll go through those after the end of the presentation.
Yes, thank you. The next one is design, and the last one is design. And so we have a couple of different projects, four different ones you can have for the design category here. The first one and the second one are all on placemaking. And so the first one is more small scale placemaking activity. And so this one is different than that next one, that comprehensive placemaking effort, in that these submissions should highlight small scale physical projects that have helped strengthen the district. And so this can include, but is generally not limited to, murals, public art, small gathering places, and temporary placemaking efforts. So there's really no budget associated with this. Like, it's not, it has to be under $1,000, which is what we've had previously in some of these award categories, or have to hit one of those benchmarks. But it should be considered a small scale placemaking efforts, like I said, like murals, public art. Conversely, on the other side, the comprehensive placemaking effort should highlight more large scale projects, such as entire streetscapes, large scale beautification projects. So really, this one is more a coordinated effort for an entire streetscape, like I said, a more comprehensive type of project. The next one is best facade rehabilitation. And so this is recognition of a building facade project that restored the original elements of the building. And so for this one, this is describing the project impact on the building, business, and historic district overall. And so this is your opportunity to show, here's what the building looked like before, and because of this facade rehabilitation, this is what it looks like afterwards. So especially this one can really paint a story of some before and after photos, and the judges want to see those stark before and after photos because that will make for a good nomination. And then the last one is best historic preservation project. So this is recognition of a preservation project, either physical or educational, that utilize the preservation ethic at the center of Main Street. So this is the opportunity to showcase. This can be a physical project, or it can be an education initiative on a historic preservation, but why the organization's efforts have been so have really gone into this historic preservation ethic here. And so again, it can be a physical project or an educational project, and it highlights in there what we need as part of those either physical preservation projects or an educational preservation project. So here's some of those special submission requirements for the design category. Again, under that nomination, you should have some before and after photos. I mentioned it with the best rehabilitation project, but some small scale placemaking activity in the comprehensive placemaking effort. It's always beneficial to hold some of those before and after photos to show what it looked like before and then what it looks like now. Again, helps to tell your story of that project. And the nominations for the small scale placemaking activity in the comprehensive placemaking effort should be accompanied by a detailed action plan. Again, very important. That's why it's in here multiple times.
Yeah, and I want to throw in and talk about the photos again, because I'm responsible for putting together the videos of the winners. And those photos are so important to, again, convey to judges, while the narrative is telling that story and conveying to judges, also the photos are doing that. And so good photography is so important to your nomination also. But also, if you're a winner, it really showcases your project and helps demonstrate why this is an award-winning project. So So the bottom line is every project and everything that's happening within your downtown, be sure and document it with photos, which I think we do more of these days with social media anyway. But that's kind of helped us. But photography is so important to the nomination and for that evening.
Yep, absolutely. It helps tell your story. This is really what it's all about. Tell those story to those judges that may not necessarily know your project. So Keith popped it in the chat, but for each one of these categories here, we have provided a checklist. So for instance, the Outstanding Community Empowerment Grant should have that narrative of 500 to 1,000 words. It has the parameters on how many photos to submit as part of that. And so you can use this checklist for each one of the your nominations that you have to make sure that your narrative, that those things that you have submitted using that submittable platform, you have checked all of those off of the list there. It even has things in there like, hey, that narrative that you're typing in there should show how the organization exhibits strong leadership or should show this kind of impact as part of that project. And so use this checklist and make sure you've checked all of those boxes before you actually submit the nomination, because you will score lower if not all of these things that were mentioned in the actual prompt for the narrative are not taken care of as part of that nomination. So this is some additional information on the finalists, and so the judges will not add new categories, but may recategorize an entry or an award for a category. All applications, narratives, and photos should be submitted electronically via submittable for each one of these categories by May 4th at midnight. So that's a Sunday. So if you need to work on it over the weekend, we give you that leeway to be able to do that, but they need to be in by midnight on May 4th using that platform. And actually in the paper copy that Keith just presented and gave in the chat there, it actually has a link in there that you can go and submit these as well. And I'll actually provide you that link as a follow-up to this webinar
Yeah,
as
and
well.
we're going to be pushing it out via our newsletter and social media, and so there'll be opportunities to grab that link too. But it's
Yeah,
all
you'll
done
see it multiple
online.
places.
And
Yeah.
may the fourth be with you
Uh,
on your nominations.
that wasn't it was definitely intentional that I put that. It definitely was. And then by June 6th, we will notify you by email or phone if your entry is a finalist. And so this gives you some time to, if that entry was the finalist, especially if it's something like the best housing project where it wasn't necessarily the Main Street organization that actually put that together. It gives you a little bit of time to reach out to that building owner and say, hey, this project was now a finalist for the Missouri Main Street Connection Evening of Excellence Awards here, and gives you time to be able to invite them to that award ceremony that night. So winners won't be announced publicly until that evening of excellence. So just because you're a finalist doesn't mean you may not be a winner, but it is still something that is absolutely worthwhile to go to that evening of excellence because it's a huge recognition of the efforts of that particular project to be recognized in this way. And then other information, we could divide the accredited and associate and the affiliate tiers, or we may combine for the final awards. And so on the submittable application, there's a spot to note whether you're an accredited or an associate Main Street program, or you're an affiliate program. There were times last year that we awarded one award in the accredited and associate category, and there were some that we awarded in then the affiliate category. So there may be times that you're not necessarily, if you're in the affiliate tier, then trying to compete with those in the accredited and the associate tier. But there were times that we did combine those as well. But know that there's going to be that leeway that we separate it out in that way based off of the actual tier. As I mentioned, the projects do not have to be led by Main Street, but do have to be approved and submitted by the Main Street program. We have said this next one multiple times, but it is worth repeating. Provide good photographs. Again, helps tell your story. We're not going to have any award category ties. I mentioned earlier that we may separate them out based off of the tiers, but within the accredited and associate tier, in the affiliate tier, we're not going to actually have any ties in that. That's something that we started last year and that we're going to continue again. And then only the winners will have videos during the actual presentation the night of the Evening of Excellence award. And so they'll be still recognized, but then the winners will be the one that will pop up on screen and have those videos. But previously, a couple years ago, every finalist had a video on there. But now every finalist will be recognized at the Evening of Excellence Award, but then only those winners will actually get a video of their award winning nomination. So now I'm going to have Keith, if he has it pulled up, actually go through the submittable application here, just so you can see what it looks like.
Stop sharing, Ben. We'll make that awkward transition. I'm not at home with my normal two screens, so let's see how this works. All right. Are you guys seeing the Get Your Kicks on Main Street?
Still screen sharing currently.
Okay. All right. May take a second.
Getting there, yeah. There we go.
Okay. Awesome. So there's actually a screen before this, but it was going to be too hard for me to navigate between all three of those. There is the first screen, which gives a lot of the guidelines and then some qualifications. There's a qualifying question. Are you under an agreement with Missouri Main Street? Are you in compliance with that agreement? And then, of course, are you in the tier system? Only Main Street communities, Main Street organizations can apply. So if you're not part of our network, you're not able to apply for these awards. So it's a simple application. It's the same, exactly the same as last year. We moved to submittable last year, which made it a lot easier, I think. Most folks that do any sort of grants or applying for funds, submittable is the app that is used most often. So very user-friendly. So, we need to know who's filling out the nomination, your Main Street organization, and then we ask what tier you're in. Again, like Ben said, we can combine or split things apart if we need to, but we want to know where you currently are just to help the judges make those determinations. And then what is your nominee name or project name? So this would be if it's a person, for the spirit of Main Street, or if it is that housing project, that would go there. And does it have an address? And if you click yes, then another box opens up for the address of that project. And then here's all the categories. And as Ben explained, there's the checklist and the PDF of the whole process that tells you how many of these you can apply for as a Main Street program in each category. But they're all here, so you click whichever one you want. And then, oh, it's right there. I'm sorry. It's in here. 2 organization, 1 economic vitality, 1 promotion, and 2 design. So you can apply for up to 6 nominations for your organization. That PDF document that we shared in the chat is also available right here within the application. So if you forget where you put that, it's right here so you can reference that checklist most importantly as you go through. And then here's that narrative piece where we give you those up to 1,000 words, minimum 500, for you to tell your story. And so I would recommend doing it in Word first, so you can use the spell check and all of those things to help you with it, have other people look at it and proof it, and then copy and paste it in here. Submittable works very good with that. And then this is where you would upload up to those 10 photos. We accept all the different types of photo submissions, and at least 5, but no more than 10, of course, high quality. And then you may have supporting materials based upon your project. Say it was the best new facade. Maybe there's a rendering that was done of the facade of the building that you want to share. Or marketing materials if it's the best new promotion category. You have the ability to share up to 10 additional upload supporting materials to make that application look very robust. And then you can either save it as you're working on it and you can go back to it. or you can click submit when you're finished. If you have any problems or issues with any of these things, Ben is your contact person, and we'll help you through that.
All right. So let's go back to our panel.
And I'm just reminding folks, again, as you're going through, if you have questions, please put those in the Q&A or in the chat, and we'll answer those when we come to the end. But I think we're ready to talk to our two previous directors. Actually, you have a whole panel of directors here, but we're going to focus on Marla and Jill here for a minute.
Yes. So I'm going to start with Marla Mills. Marla is the former director of Old Town Cape. And so, Marla, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself and then talking about what was your process as an organization that really made for a successful application.
Marla, you're on mute.
Yeah, sorry about that. Thanks, Ben, and thanks for the introduction. Yeah, and I didn't know he had this slide in here, so I'm like, oh, that's me. I am, as Ben said, Marla Mills, and I was the executive director of Old Town Cape for 13 years, from 2006 to 2019, and then recently have rejoined Missouri Main Street the last few years to help with some grant processes. But my time at Old Town Cape was amazing, to say the least. And I think I was really pleased when Ben asked me to be on this panel, because I think the awards sometimes get overlooked in a community because they can seem peripheral. They can seem like that's not the real work of what we're doing, right? And it's not. But I mean, in a lot of ways, it's not. But I think it's important to your community to really recognize what's happening in the downtown and the projects that are going on. And what we found is that we found that these awards, even just the nomination, if you think, well, I can't compete, we don't want to nominate because unless we're going to win, bringing people from our community to the Main Street Conference, even if they didn't win, they were exposed to so much and they felt appreciated, and getting that publicity in the community, because you can make publicity out of being, especially if you're if you're just a runner-up, even if you haven't won, that announcement alone can create some real energy. So I'm a real advocate of spending some time on looking at awards and recognition for your community projects, programs, and that kind of thing. I think it does a lot for your community. Ben asked me to kind of describe our process. We did it, and it was it was set up a little bit differently. And I will say a shout out to Submittable. It's a really easy, if anybody's intimidated, it's a really easy platform to use. Don't be intimidated by it. It helps really direct your nomination, and it's really super user friendly. So don't be put off by that. But our process was we kind of started it in-house with we had a small staff, and we would start kind of with the staff and say, look at everything we're doing. Here's all the categories, what project, what person, what project, what event do we have that looks like it might fit in this? And we kind of started a list of possible nominations, and then took that to our committees and our board to say, here's the possible nominations. Here's kind of what we're looking at from our perspective. But sometimes your volunteers and your board can be way more creative, can see things in a different light. We, as staff, when you're working in it, it's like you don't realize that's, that might be kind of something that can be identified and recognized. It's like you think it's something that you just do on a daily basis or whatever. So taking it, I think, really important, taking it, even if you don't start there, you can start in wherever you start, even if you're, a volunteer in the program and you don't have staff, because this is definitely not limited to staff driven things. But even if you don't have a staff to start with, here's some ideas that we have, and then just really encourage people to be creative and think about everything your program has done over that last year, and how can we package that to tell our story better, and to really get that out. And then as far as writing the nominations, I think it's really important. As Ben said, and Keith too, remember that the people that are reading these, the judges, they may not and likely won't know your community, or they may not know this event that you did. They may not know about it. And so no matter how great you think it is, if you can't articulate um, the essence of that event, or the what's special about this development project, or why this developer was so good, if you can't articulate that, they may not ever see it. And no matter how good the project is, you have to be very articulate about that. But that doesn't limit, I think, having volunteers, uh, because it's like, okay, we can nominate in 6 categories. If you decide to do all 6, that sounds daunting, because there's, that's 6 different pieces that you have to do. We had, both staff and volunteers write pieces of it and then put it together. And yes, it makes sense to maybe have one person, somebody who's really good in that kind of, in writing, or putting that together. Maybe it makes sense to run all of it through one person and have them edit it and, pull it all together. But we had, like I said, we really engaged the volunteers um, at the committee levels and our board to help us figure out kind of what direction to go.
Marla, 2 things came to mind as you were talking. Our Main Street programs in Missouri submit quarterly reports to us.
Yeah.
So that's a good place to start as you're thinking about, because it's hard to remember back 12 months, right? And actually, it's going to be even more than 12 months in some cases.
Yeah.
By the time you're putting this together, go look at your quarterly reports and, what were the projects that you reported to Missouri Main Street, and there that gives you a little bit of the impact or dollars that it took, particularly for those EV and design categories. And then also, you said as you're putting it together, make sure you have all those things, pieces and parts. It just reminded me of high school when you're writing a story: who, what, when, where, why, and how. Because again, going back to those judges may not know anything about your community or your project, and so you've got to cover those bases as you're telling that story.
Yeah, I agree. And looking back, also that you just reminded me, I think that's great, because those numbers, sometimes we forget how amazing they are year over year. But it also reminded me because Ben mentioned, action plans, bringing the action plans into this, showing us how you planned for this. And it made me think about how important, and I recognize this a lot. You get so caught up in doing the work of the organization, and it's, sometimes those details and the action plans become, it's like, oh gosh, I just, I don't want to have to sit down and put it on paper. We just want to do it. But I think it reinforces the idea that those action plans and planning and documenting will help you in every area of the organization. And so if you can go back and have an action plan that outlined this event or this activity that you did that you want to write up for a nomination, it's going to make it makes your life so much easier in the end if all along the way you document everything that you do.
Right. Great. Thanks, Marla.
Okay.
Yep. All right, now we're going to move on to Jill Purvis. I also snuck in a slide for her as well. Um, so Jill is the former director of the Warrensburg Main Street program. So would you mind introducing yourself and talking about your process as an organization for a successful application?
Yeah, so my name is Jill Purvis. I have previously been involved with Warrensburg Main Street, started out as the events coordinator in 2012, and eventually became the executive director in 2019, and I retired at the end of 2023. So we kind of have a similar process that Marla discussed, but we also do an annual awards, which I know several programs do those as well. And we take our annual award winners for our local organization. We do these every year. We sit down and we decide who we want to locally give out awards to. We have our award banquet in January, and we use those as a catalyst also to decide who we're going to nominate for these state level awards. Like Marla said, we kind of use the same process. It since I started in 2012 up to when what the process is now, it's kind of changed and morphed, and it does really depend on the project, kind of where the nomination comes from. Sometimes it's staff, like Marla said, taking it to the committees. Sometimes it's just us going to the committees and saying, "Here's the categories. What do you guys think?" Using your board, just using your volunteers, anybody really, just to kind of generate those ideas of who you want to nominate. I also think for Main Street, it's super important to celebrate. It's so easy just to do the work, put your head down, do this, do that, have this committee meeting, do this project, do that project. But if you don't come back and celebrate those locally, even within your boards, within your committees, within your staff, that you're really missing a big piece of the puzzle, in my opinion. So I think having awards like this at the state level is just a way to celebrate what you're doing, just to, like Marla said, to look back and be like, wow, look at what we accomplished last year. Look at these amazing things we've done. And then to use those throughout the whole next year to promote your Main Street, to promote these individuals, to thank your volunteers, to recognize your board. It's just a great way and a great tool um, that you have at your disposal. And so it's so important to celebrate that. And like Marla said as well, that using this information all throughout the year, promoting these awards, whether you're a winner or just a finalist, or even the fact that you just nominated somebody, putting that out in your community, putting that out within your own organization is just huge.
Right. Yeah, I think about I was the executive director in Excelsior Springs. And when I go into a couple of the businesses that received awards in Excelsior Springs, they prominently have their award hanging up in their business and are very proud of that. And it does bring that recognition to them, but also to the Main Street program. Jill, you talked about, many of our Main Street programs don't have staff. So would you talk a little bit more about how you worked with the committees and how, if you don't have staff, doesn't mean you shouldn't be applying for awards or that your awards aren't going to be any good because you don't have staff working on it. We have many Main Street award-winning projects from affiliate communities without a director. So can you talk a little bit more about kind of what tasks the committees took on whenever they were responsible for an award nomination?
Yeah, absolutely. So lots of times if the committee is getting on board, or like he said, if you don't have staff, it can just be as easy as just sitting around and reading off the award nominations and saying, where do we feel like we have a project or a person that would fit this? And just maybe sitting down and writing some bullet points, like here's the highlights of the project. This is what it was. They talked about telling the story. This is who was involved. This is sometimes the who was involved is just as important as the project. It's the first time you've ever had a developer do something in your community, or it's the first time the city has really stepped up in a significant way, or sometimes just explaining that little piece of why your community feels like this is so important. It doesn't necessarily, your impact numbers may not be as impressive as other bigger organizations, but sometimes for your community, the fact that you got your school district to agree to do a joint project, that's a huge win. And so you need to communicate that in your nomination. Why is that project so important? But, sit down, make those bullet points, have somebody write a rough draft, have somebody else read it, everybody kind of add in if it makes sense to maybe have quotes from individuals, like this is why it was impactful, this is why it was important. That can be used as well. I think just doing a collaborative effort makes your nomination stronger because it kind of gives different viewpoints and aspects of that. You don't have to be a, you know, world-class writer to win an award. You just have to get all the information in there, share your story, tell the facts that make it important, and tell, like I said, why is it important for your community? Why is it such a big deal for your community?
Right. Yeah. You're kind of competing with yourself in a sense of you've got the story to tell, and how do you tell it from the community, from the Main Street's perspective. And that's why we have the different tier categories, accredited and associate as one, and affiliate. So you're competing with like organizations, as a newer Main Street program, you may feel it's difficult to compete against a Warrensburg or a Cape Girardeau that are accredited Main Street programs and have been around for 20 plus years. So we recognize that, and that's why we have the different tier categories too. And want to give everybody an opportunity to share their compelling stories and be showcased at a state level. All right, anybody have questions from our audience? Please type those in the chat or in the Q&A. We just have a few minutes left here. Marla, any other thoughts? I know you said you talked about some staff-led, some committee-led. Any other thoughts on utilizing the committees to do the applications? Or I guess let's start with, did the board sit down and go over the award categories and chime in also? Just kind of talk about it from a non-staff perspective, because I think the majority of our folks on here today are our newer Main Street programs that maybe don't have staff.
I'm gonna get to that, Keith, but I'm gonna touch on something that Jill said too, that you guys, just to reiterate, showing how something is important in your community when you write these nominations, because like she said, and it made me think about, like when I was in Main Street here in Cape, we work really well with our chamber, but there's some communities who don't work with their chamber at all. And if you've done your first project with your chamber, and that's a big deal for your community, just to say we did a project with our chamber, the judges aren't going to understand. They're going to think that's commonplace. So you need to really identify why is that so important in your community. So
Yep.
I really liked that and think it's something good to highlight.
Yep. And to
As
add
far
on
as getting,
to add on to that, Marla, you may have a $1 million project in your community, but another community may have had a $10,000 project that had a bigger impact because of the community, what the project was, and all those sorts of things. So don't think it has to be a big financial project.
right.
To what you both were saying, how did this impact your community? And that's the story to tell, kind of that why of the who, what, when, where, why, and how. The
Yeah.
why piece of it we've had small projects win over large projects just because it meant more to the community, and they demonstrated that in their nomination.
Yeah. Yeah. As I said, the judges won't be able to read between the lines a lot of the time. So you really have to show that.
Connect the dots.
Yep.
Yeah, connect the dots. As far as volunteers and the board, and I agree, and I know that not everybody has staff. I think these awards are, obviously very important to those organizations as well, because volunteers really do need to be recognized. And it's hard when you have only volunteers trying to recognize volunteer, it's a hard way to go. But I think, yes, having the board, we did, telling the board these, sending out, these are the nominations. Do you guys have, please look them over, and discussing it at a board meeting, saying these are the nominations. Where can we really recognize something that's happening in our community? And it's better to have, I'm going to say, you don't have to nominate in all six just because there's six categories. If you have two good nominations, then really focus on those two. As a small community, that's huge. And so don't think that just because you can't nominate a bunch of things that you shouldn't nominate any. And so we tried to emphasize that with our board too, to say, and our volunteers to say, just think about everything that we do, but let's not, let's really emphasize the area that has, as you said, made the biggest impact. And I think your board, as volunteers running an organization, if you don't have staff, they're going to be the ones that really do know, what's, because they're the ones that really did all the work. And so they should, they should really set back and try. It's hard sometimes to sit back when you're the one doing the work, if you're the volunteer, to say, oh, this is award-winning work. But yeah, definitely at the board level, looking over and it also helps educate your board and your other volunteers in both, and that's for both a staff-driven and a volunteer-driven organization, to understand what the awards are and what other communities are doing, and to just open up their mind. I think it's I think it's a critical tool for recognition, but also for education.
Right.
So it's good to share that, even if they don't come up with anything, it's
Yeah.
really good to share that.
Yeah. Well, I challenge all the Main Street programs on the webinar today, and those that are going to watch this later as a recording. I challenge you to submit 1 or 2 nominations for your Main Street program. We want more nominations. I mean, we do get a good handful, but we would like to see more. And I think Marla started with this. Just nominating a project is a press release then for your Main Street program in your local community. Hey, this is the Main Street program just nominated this great project or this person. And we're hoping to be presented with an award at the Missouri Main Street's Evening of Excellence at the Main Street Conference. And I mean, it is all about publicity for you locally also. How are you getting recognition, proving your worth, setting the tone for, if you're a new organization, new Main Street program, this is who we are and what we do, getting your word out there again. So utilize all of those avenues to bring attention to the great work that you're doing in your Main Street program.
And then if you are a winner, we provide a press release with that. We put all the videos on our YouTube page that you can then share on all sorts of social media channels. And so it becomes an even better way or bigger way out, even past the award nomination stage, if you're the winner, to actually share all of that great work that project was able to garner.
Yep. All right.
And I would say too, that if you are a finalist or a winner, like the panelists have said, like, use that information throughout the year. Take those people to your city council meetings, to your county commissioners, and write the press releases, highlight them on your social media. Depending on the situation, maybe you can go to their office or their work and highlight them there. Like, use that opportunity to promote not just their contribution, but also your organization as somebody who is important in the community and recognizes its citizens for the hard work they're doing.
Yep. Yeah. You could do a press release for the nomination, and then if you're a finalist, a press release as the finalist, and then if you win, a press release as the winner. So 3 potential opportunities for you in your Main Street program. All right, Ben, anything to wrap us up?
Yeah, just to put a bow on it, we give you about 3 months in between this webinar and then when they're actually due on May 4th. And so take this time, everything that Jill talked about, everything that Marla talked about, put those processes in place, take a look at all of these award categories, figure out where you as an organization wants to apply in each one of these categories, and put those processes in place. Who's going to write the award? Who's going to proof the award nomination? What are the different pictures that we need involved here? And so use that time wisely to put those different processes in place so you're ready to submit on that May 4th deadline.
Yeah. A couple of years ago, we really strive to get this information out quicker to give you guys more time to put your applications together. So take advantage of the time. Don't wait until May 1st to start talking about this. All right. Any final words? Any final questions from anybody? We'll give you oh, we're in St. Charles. We should have said that too. We're in St. Charles, July 22nd through the 24th. So hope to see you there for the conference. Registration will be open in a few months. We usually give 2 months, I think, before 2 months for people to register for the conference. So you'll see that information coming out. And we're finalizing educational tours and all those things related to the conference. So hope to see you there. Marla and Jill, thank you so much for taking your morning to help us out and provide some great information for our participants. And again, if you have any questions, Ben is our lead for the awards portion of the conference. So you can reach him at ben@momainstreet.org, and that is also on that PDF that we sent and on the application. So thank you all very much. Have a great day. See you
Thanks,
in St.
everyone.
Charles. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone. Good luck.
Bye.